You know, some cities have a story, but Detroit has a soul. It's a city of incredible transformations, a tiny wooden fort that somehow grew into this mighty industrial giant, a giant that literally put the entire world on wheels. It's a city that burned completely to the ground, only to rise right back up from its own ashes. And today, as the absolutely magnificent Michigan Central Station reopens its doors, it's more than just a comeback story. It's a symbol of that very soul. So let's dive into this incredible story of downfall and resilience.
It's a pretty big question, right? But it's a question Detroit has been answering for over 200 years. See, this isn't just a story about buildings or economics or politics. It's a story about the human spirit. It's about a city that seems to have rebirth woven right into its DNA.
To really understand Detroit today, you and we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because this whole theme of rising again, it's not some new marketing campaign. No, it was forged in a literal fire, right at the city's dawn.
Okay, so Detroit starts out as this French outpost way back in 1701. It gets passed to the British, then eventually to the United States. By 1805, it's this modest little frontier town, pretty much all wooden houses. And then, on one summer day, disaster strikes, the Great Fire. And it consumes, well, pretty much everything.
So, faced with just total devastation, a priest, Father Gabriel Richard, he utters these incredibly powerful words. "We hope for better things. It will rise from the ashes." Now, this wasn't just some hopeful thought. It became the city's official motto. Think about that. This single phrase, born from total catastrophe, would go on to define Detroit's entire identity for centuries. It was a promise.
And rise it did. Oh man, did it ever rise. The 20th century saw Detroit transform from just a regional town into an absolute global powerhouse. This was its golden age. This was the time it became the engine that built modern America.
And the catalyst, of course, was the automobile. Henry Ford's moving assembly line wasn't just an invention, it was a social revolution. It created these amazing, high-paying jobs that drew in millions of people. The population just exploded. And by 1920, Detroit was the fourth largest city in America, the undisputed Motor City.
The city's prosperity wasn't just hidden away in its factories. You could see it right downtown, and nowhere more impressively than at the J.L. Hudson's department store. Now, this wasn't just a store. At 32 levels, it was the tallest department store in the world. We're talking a city within a city. Over 700 fitting rooms, its own hospital, even a rooftop garden to grow flowers for its own flower shop. Just incredible. But the story behind that empire is what's truly remarkable. See, years earlier, J.L. Hudson's first store actually went bankrupt. He had to pay his creditors only 60 cents on the dollar. But once he found success again in Detroit, he did something almost unheard of. He tracked down every single one of his old creditors and paid them back in full with interest. That single act of integrity, well, it became his reputation. It opened doors and built a legacy of business and philanthropy that literally shaped the city. Detroit's strength wasn't just economic either. In the 1930s, it really was the city of champions. The Lions won the NFL championship, the Red Wings won their first Stanley Cup, but one champion, well, he stood above them all. A man who carried the hopes of not just a city, but of an entire nation into the boxing ring. His name was Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, and his 1938 rematch with the German boxer Max Schmeling became one of the most symbolically charged sporting events in all of history. I mean, think about it. Nazi Germany was on the rise. This wasn't just a fight. It was freedom versus fascism. It was American democracy versus Nazi ideology, all played out for the entire world to see. And when Louis won, with a devastating first-round knockout, the impact was profound. As young Malcolm X later recalled, it sparked the greatest celebration of race pride our generation had ever known. You see, every time Joe Louis stepped into the ring against a white opponent, he refuted those disgusting theories of white superiority. His quiet dignity and his powerful fists gave hope and courage to millions of Black Americans. So as Detroit rolled into the mid-century, it produced yet another global phenomenon, a sound that would change music forever. But this explosion of creative genius happened against a backdrop of these deep, simmering social fractures that were just about to tear the city apart. In a small house on West Graham Boulevard, a man named Berry Gordy Jr. founded Motown Records. He famously took the discipline of the Ford assembly line and just applied it to making hit records, and boy, did it work. Artists like the Supremes, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, The Temptations, they became legends. Gordy called it the sound of young America, and he was absolutely right. Motown smashed racial barriers, bringing Black voices and faces into homes all across a still segregated nation. But that joyful sound couldn't mask the reality on the streets. We're talking decades of discrimination, poverty, discriminatory housing policies called redlining, police brutality. It all created a powder keg. And on a hot July night in 1967, a police raid on an illegal after-hours club was the spark. The city just erupted in flames. The aftermath was devastating. 5 days of violence left 43 people dead and over 2,000 buildings completely destroyed. But the deeper wound was the acceleration of what became known as white flight. The riot solidified the racial and economic segregation that had been building for years, leaving the city with a shrinking tax base and deepening poverty. It was a turning point, and one from which Detroit would not recover for decades. What followed was just a long, painful decline. The auto industry faltered, the population plummeted, and the city that once symbolized American prosperity became a symbol of urban decay. And this was the bottom. $18 billion. That's the staggering amount of debt that forced the city of Detroit to file for the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history on July 18, 2013. The city that had built the world was officially broke. It was the absolute lowest point in its long and storied history. But hey, remember that motto? It will rise from the ashes. Bankruptcy, as painful as it was, cleared the way for a change. And right there, in the city's darkest hour, a new chapter began, fueled not by outsiders, but by the defiant spirit of the people who never ever gave up. This mindset was captured perfectly by a local clothing brand, David's Vintage, and their slogan, Detroit Never Left. The whole narrative of a dead city, they refused to accept it. As they put it, we just took a break from being great, but now we're ready to reclaim our throne. I love that. And the comeback began. In 2014, a new mayor, Mike Duggan, focused on the basics, turning the streetlights back on, picking up the trash, neighborhood by neighborhood. Investments started to return. And then came the ultimate symbol. Ford bought the derelict Michigan Central Station, transforming this monument to decay into a beacon of innovation. But it's not a simple story. The residents who weathered the city's worst are now fighting to make sure this new Detroit is for them too, pushing back against a wave of gentrification that threatens to price them out of their own neighborhoods. Detroit's journey shows us that a true comeback isn't about erasing the past. The scars are still there. You can see them in the empty lots, the lingering inequality, but now they're worn proudly, like a testament to the resilience it took to survive and the incredible strength it takes to rebuild. Which leaves us with this final thought. Detroit's story, from fiery rebirth to industrial glory, from a cultural icon to rock bottom, and now to this inspiring revival, it's just extraordinary. It proves that a city is so much more than its buildings or its balance sheet. It's people, its dreams, and it's an unbreakable spirit. What Detroit's journey really teaches us is that the soul of a city isn't found in its moments of triumph, but in its unwavering will to rise again and again from the ashes.